Morning, everyone. Jeff DeVerter with Cloud Talk Live. That's right. Welcome to a Tuesday. No, it is not Tuesday. It is Thursday. That's right. Usually when we're doing these, it's Tuesday, and we have all of these days to wait till the weekend. Now we're on Friday Eve. We're going to have a great conversation here today. I'm so glad that you're here. But folks, you know the drill. You know the routine. I want to know who you are and where you are. Of course, welcome to the program. And so glad that you are here, but I'd love for you to introduce yourselves. Tell us who you are, where you are in the world. Just put it in the comments on whatever platform you're on. YouTube, we're there. We're on LinkedIn, on the Rackspace channels, on the Jeff DeVerter channel on my properties. So I do hope that you are here and would love to know who you are. Hey there, and Haroon is the first to say hello. So Haroon, you win the prize. I wish I had something tangible to send you, but I don't. But other than to say, welcome. Hey, and if any of you want to get a hold of us over here at Cloud Talk, here at the Solve program, you know it's super easy to do. All you have to do is to send us an email over at solve@rackspace.com, and that will track us down. Look at all these happy people showing up. Joey's here from Atlanta. Who else do we got? We got John's in from somewhere. It's scrolled down. We got folks. They're from everywhere. Guys, I'm so glad that you're here. Adam Bunch is here. Adam, I haven't talked to you in a while, buddy. We need to catch up. Abdul is here. Sean is here. Happy Thursday to Sean. We have a little private chat over here. Daniel's challenging me to keep up. I'm going to do my very best. David is here from PL. I don't know where that is, but I'm glad everyone is here. Guys, it's going to be a great conversation. We have an amazing racker here. You might call him an ex-racker, but we have a saying, once a racker, always a racker. And we're going to dig into that deep conversation and topic that has to do with security, and specifically from a network and point of view. So get ready for that. And Sri Lanka's here today. I'm so glad you've made it. Another Texas person. We've got Wisconsin. I've got people from that part of the world. Dubai is here. India is here. Everyone is here. It's Thursday. Everyone's excited. Guys, you're more chatty than you are normally, and I love it. So keep it going. Do you know John Engates? Well, he is going to be up here very shortly to share with us as we dig into the topic of the day. But first, I would be remiss if I didn't encourage you to go and check out everything that we have over at Solve, rackspace.com/solve. It's our thought leadership program. And as you see on the screen here, you can subscribe, of course, to the podcast. The audio from these events shows up over there. We do our own stuff that shows up in there that's not here. So the only way for you to not miss that is to go and subscribe. So you can find Cloud Talk anywhere that podcasts are found. Maria from Canada is here. Robert is here from Mexico City. After all the shaking, something new happened down there. I maybe missed the news, but I hope that you are safe and well. Several folks from Mexico are here. Glad that you have made it in this morning. Well, I've already teased the fact that John Engates is going to join us today. And John is a field CTO over at Cloudflare. He was Rackspace's first and longest running CTO, helped form the foundation of who we are as an organization over here. So much in debt to John. But let's bring John up on stage. We're going to dig into our conversation of today. We've got Philly is here, just close to producer Daniel. And speaking of Daniel, let's bring John up on stage. Who else do we have? Maria, of course, she's still here. India, of course. John, welcome to Cloud Talk Live.
Hi, Jeff. Good morning, everybody. I see all those faces coming in on my console there. It's cool to see where everybody's coming from. I'm from San Antonio, Texas, the home of Rackspace.
That's right. John, you were born and bred here in San Antonio. Is that correct?
I was. Crazy enough. Like a lot of people, they don't have the luxury of living and working in their hometown, but I've managed to figure out how to do it from San Antonio my whole career. So, not too far from the headquarters of Rackspace.
The headquarters of Rackspace. That's right. Hey, let's do a little commercial for San Antonio. What's some of your favorite things to do here?
Well, we have great Mexican food in San Antonio. We're known for that. So eating, that's always a favorite.
Top of the list.
Yeah, we have downtown tourist trap called the Alamo. Every once in a while I go down there on a bike ride and I tour around downtown, usually on a weekend when it's not too busy. Yeah. And mountain bikes and road bikes, riding around downtown and then just, getting out when it's cool weather. It's still a little hot here, as people probably realize. It's South Texas, so it's a bit hot during the summer months, but it's getting toward that time when we can get outside again.
I know, it's nice. The mornings, I don't want to call them cool, but they're just not still hot from the day
That's
before,
right. That's right.
which is great. Well, several folks from San Antonio have popped into the chat, which is fantastic. Chile is here. Love that. But John, you're over at Cloudflare now. Let's start with a little discussion around what's Cloudflare's role and place in the world.
Yeah, well, a lot of people know Cloudflare in the context of protecting websites, web applications from all kinds of attacks. Primarily, we get a lot of DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service attacks. Those are an ever-present threat on the internet. Sometimes those turn into ransom DDoS attacks. So, ransomware can come in the form of all kinds of things, and DDoS is no exception. So we have been protecting companies from that for years. We've built a network around the world that basically intercepts those attacks, blocks them, filters them, absorbs them, if you will, and protects websites and web applications, and increasingly APIs. API security is a new area for a lot of folks. In fact, more than 50% of the traffic that we see flowing across our network now is API traffic. And so we're starting to actually, protect those as well. And so companies really need this kind of protection just to keep themselves online and healthy when it comes to their websites and apps.
Yeah. Jen, I find it really interesting that you're seeing so much API traffic now. Application interfaces, it's a way to abstract the visual layer or some of the behind the scenes functionality of either straight up applications or web applications themselves. But when you start to see API type traffic, you're seeing very purposeful traffic flowing across your network. And that's encouraging because just as we've been in this series now, and we're going to dig into accidental strategies today. When you see somebody purposefully sending their API traffic, this is not an accident. This is part of an architecture.
Yeah, well, look, I think when you think about an API, it's the back end of many applications. Most applications consume multiple APIs, and that's become more the case since we've moved into cloud and to mobile. When you think about your mobile phone, I mean, every single application there is consuming multiple APIs,
That's right.
and many of those are distributed. They're no longer all behind the corporate firewall. Most things are not behind the corporate firewall anymore, if a corporate firewall even exists anymore. And so what we're seeing is this sort of diffusion of applications, into the cloud and to SaaS applications that are all intertwined and intermeshed, and that is something that happened sort of accidentally. I don't know if anybody had a master plan for everything to go from behind the firewall out to the distributed web, but that has happened to us. And so that's when we think about an accidental strategy. It's things happening to us, not intentionally planning for those kinds of things.
Well, and how much of that was, of course, accelerated through what happened with COVID when everybody scampered home from their offices, and IT leaders were forced with having to figure out now how do we help people be productive in these scenarios. So there was so much that happened around transformation that was forced by that single action. So now as we have some of that in our rear view mirror and we start to look at it, there was a lot of things that happened, quote unquote, by accident that probably would have taken a couple of more years, 5 years, 10 years, maybe to have caused that level of transformation. But here we are, and now we get to deal with some of that stuff.
Well, the ripple effects of the pandemic have certainly continued to happen to us as well. I mean, we all sort of thought there would be a day when we would sort of all go back to work, and that hasn't happened yet. I mean, I'm still working from home. You're apparently working from home with the guitars in the background there. And, I don't think anybody could have predicted all of the changes that have happened during, or, because of the pandemic and after the pandemic, the remote work, the hybrid work, the supply chain problems. A lot of companies have struggled with obtaining the equipment that they need or the infrastructure they need to execute on the plans that they may have had in place. Even if they did have plans, retrofitting infrastructure, sometimes supply chain gets in the way, and you don't really have the luxury of just ordering up the equipment you need and having it delivered overnight.
And John, one of the ways that as everybody went home, when we connected before, large part it was through some level of VPN and some degree of restriction there. But one of the things that Cloudflare brings to the table is being able to secure that traffic, and that being very different in a sense from a VPN thing and helping it be more transparent. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, the VPN was the historic sort of way we accessed the corporate network. If we were remote, if we were traveling, we would, connect via the VPN. I always think of it kind of like dialing up to the internet. You remember the good old days of clicking the app to dial up. Well, that's how
you and I
VPN
do.
works.
I'm not sure if anybody else is
not
old enough
everybody
to
else.
remember.
But anyway, the VPN client was something that we used for remote access. But increasingly, we are living our lives remotely or, in a hybrid fashion. And again, increasingly, applications are no longer on the corporate network. And so what's emerged is a zero trust network architecture approach to remote access. So ZTNA is a way to get people onto the network, onto a secure form of network, and then get them to their applications very quickly and do the security very near to the end user. There's a approach that the analysts have come up with called Sassy, Secure Access Service Edge, basically, that intends to distribute security out to the edge of the internet so that we can reduce latency and improve performance and the user experience and really improve upon that whole legacy VPN experience that everybody sort of hates. And make it perform well for SaaS and cloud-based applications.
Right. Hey, real quick question to everybody who's watching. Just put in the chat: what's your company's strategy? Are you guys still bound to a VPN that's going to bring you into some level of corporate network, or is it more of a Sassy based? Just curious, little straw poll amongst the viewers here. See what folks are up to. But John, again, it's a company that has done this sort of work is a company that is thinking about how to do this purposefully. The pandemic and us going home was a catalyst for change. IT leaders have gotten their brains around that. Let's talk about some of the other strategies. We talk about Sassy as a technique for doing that as well, about how to ensure that data is ultimately kept safe and secure.
Mm-hmm. Well, we basically want to encrypt the data as much as we can and everywhere we can. We want to be intentional about sort of the onboarding of users onto a secure network. We want to connect them from end to end and from point to point across that network. And increasingly also the internet is becoming the network. I mean, we used to all build private networks, private WANs, if you will, and we would sort of assume that the security was built into the network. But we can no longer assume the security is built in because it's the internet, and the internet by design, it wasn't ever built for what we're using it for. And so what we're really doing is wrapping security control over the top of the internet, and again, giving users that end-to-end security from wherever they are in the world to the applications that they're trying to get to. Those applications are increasingly in SaaS and cloud, as I mentioned. I mean, that was sort of an unintentional, sort of way things played out. People didn't really go into the cloud thinking they were going to pick up everything and move it, lock, stock, and barrel to the cloud. I mean, that sort of happened unintentionally, SaaS little by little. But here we are, and I think if we could, again, put a master plan in place, we would have thought about the network and the security first, put that foundation in place, and then built on top of that with our applications and our other elements of our stack. But here we are with this situation we find ourselves in, and now companies are looking for a roadmap or a plan for how to retrofit their networks and their infrastructure to match up with where their applications and users live.
Well, and other areas where that can be such a huge benefit is, when companies come in or when the bad guys come around and start phishing, and these things still can make it through, corporate spam filtering, or if it's coming in through your own personal email and accidentally, there you go, clicking. There's a thing in the news that I'll share here shortly about an airline that had an issue with that recently. But when you have this level of protection at the network, you're then able to, should somebody do a bad thing, recognize the fact that there's some badness going on.
Yeah, well, also compartmentalize that
That's
risk.
right.
If you can, there's a statistic that I read that over 90% of cyber attacks start with an email. So phishing emails specifically are a really key element of zero trust as well. It's something that Cloudflare truly believes that email ought to be a part of the zero trust story. And so we try to block phishing emails, and then if something should make it through, the rest of the zero trust controls can hopefully prevent lateral movement, prevent the bad guys from making their way into other applications or more sensitive parts of the network, by limiting their access to only the specific tools that user should have access to. So we're sort of protecting users against the risk of somebody taking over their identity and then having access to the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, everything behind the firewall. That no longer really works. We need to stop thinking about things as this sort of castle and moat, keep people on the outside and assume everybody's trusted on the inside. We really can't work in that model anymore. And that's really what zero trust solves for.
That's right. So I love Annabelle's comment, shift left, of course. There are a lot of advocates or folks still using VPN as I scroll through some of the chat here. And, one thing, at first it's sort of concerned is the wrong word. I'm seeing so much VPN, but John, the reality is there's no one size fits all. There's no one magic tool, is there, to solve all of these problems? Yet it's part of an overall strategy.
Yeah, and zero trust itself is a strategy. It's an approach. It's not a technology per se. There are elements that have sort of become a part of any zero trust strategy. But if you think about zero trust, everybody's on a different road, so to speak, and everybody comes at it from a different perspective. And different companies have different needs. If you're a big enterprise and you've got a lot of existing infrastructure, you may approach it differently than if you were a startup or a new company or a small company. Sometimes we hear large enterprises trying to solve for contractor access or remote access to a specific application. And that's a great use case for a zero trust architecture, is basically onboarding some subset of your users. But everybody's coming at this a different way. In fact, we've published recently something called Zero Trust Roadmap at zerotrustroadmap.org. And it's basically a generic roadmap that anybody can look at. It's not vendor specific. It's something that almost anybody can take and integrate sort of into their own approach, their own strategy. So you don't have to be accidental about it. You can be intentional. zerotrustroadmap.org. It's, again, vendor agnostic, something that everybody can take advantage of and start to implement today.
So, John, that's something I think is fascinating, and it's a bit of a wider trend, which is this. In a sense, it's a bit of a merge of open source technology in a corporate construct. You guys have come up with this roadmap. You've put it out there, not on your web property. You put it out on a unique property, and that you're not unique in this area. Other companies are putting out, different tools that may help, monitoring capabilities. But most all of these companies as well, including yours, have free levels of service. You were on here a couple of months ago, and one of my news articles was the fact that you guys had stopped one of the largest, HTTPS attacks on a free tier. That was incredible.
Yeah, a lot of our services are made available to people. I mean, we do believe in building a better internet for everyone. Everyone is the key word there.
That's right.
Everyone deserves to have the use of the internet to the same quality and level of security that the big guys have. And sometimes the big guys have just this tremendous budgets to help stop DDoS attacks, stop phishing attacks, whatever. But everybody deserves that, and so we make that available to everyone on a free tier. And then there are elements of our service that get better. If you need more capability, you can add those on with the more advanced products. But even even Zero Trust is available for free for a certain number of users. You can try it out. I've actually got it running on my home network. Anybody can try that out and start to understand how it can benefit you, even in that free mode.
John, where do they go to learn more? Obviously, I think you're going to tell me it's cloudflare.com.
Cloudflare.com is the best place, and you can go sign up for a free account. You can open an account, try it out. It really is easy to get started. That's the one true element of Cloudflare that I appreciate most, is just how easy it is to get started. And then when you think about the difference, you mentioned there's a lot of other folks in the space. There are a lot of people approaching Zero Trust, all coming at it from a different perspective. I think the one true difference between Cloudflare and everyone else is the size, the scope, the nature of our network. We're in 275 different cities around the world, and each one of those becomes an on-ramp onto the the Cloudflare network, and that really helps you get to those applications as painlessly and simply as possible. So it's really something that's pretty compelling.
Well, John, I appreciate you taking time out of your day, coming and sharing what is new over at Cloudflare. And really, the encouragement here is, folks, there's no reason that your security strategy should ever be, your cloud strategy should ever be accidental. Accidents happen along the way, but let's be purposeful about this stuff. Hey, thanks, Sean, for getting that up there. There's the sign up. Good old Sean. So thanks so much for being here and helping us understand this. You're going to be back next month. We got Cybersecurity Awareness Month happening in October. We've got a big event we're pulling together towards the end of the month. So everyone, you're going to want to make sure you pay attention to all that stuff. But John, thanks so much for being here today.
Hey, thanks, Jeff.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. John, wealth of information. I encourage you, if you don't already follow him over on the social medias, to go find him out, and follow him on LinkedIn, especially. He is a wealth of great information. Sean Gardner, you are a friend and resource and colleague, helping us make sure we all have all the right information in the background. Hey, Daniel, if you wouldn't mind grabbing what Sean posted and making sure it goes out on the Rackspace side as well, that would be fantastic. Free tools are out there, everyone, and you can help model. Even if your organization isn't necessarily doing it what you think right, you can model that as well. Randy Moreland is here. Thank you for being here, Randy. Oh, the good friends are back. All right. Well, let's press on, guys. We have made it through our chat. I'd love for you to go learn more about all of the other free stuff that we have, information and resources for you. Obviously, just as John and Cloudflare and the team over there have free resources for you, so does Rackspace. So if you go over to rackspace.com/solve, first thing you will not be greeted with is a pop-up asking what you can buy today. It is a pop-up free, email entry free zone. You just get to go over there and consume the information. So we are... Our recent security study has been released. We go out every quarter and do an industry survey of a topic. This last one was all around security. We ask over 1,400 different IT decision makers what's going on in the security world for them. And we've got that information published over there now. So head on over, check that out. You can sign up, of course, to subscribe to the podcast anywhere those are found, and be notified, hopefully, when we go live here. As long as you're following a Rackspace or follow me over on the LinkedIn, then you'll learn all about that. All right, let's press on. That takes us from the cloud discussion. We're going to move on to what is new in the cloud this week. And that's where I have the chance to share with you a little bit of what's happening in the news and why it is important to you. And first out of the gates is not just Amazon in this case, but Amazon, Microsoft, and Google facing greater UK scrutiny from the regulators over there, the organization called Ofcom. They have some good acronyms over in the UK. But it's a watchdog group, and they are set to launch a study examining the role of Amazon, Microsoft, and Google in the cloud services market, looking for fair play. Do they have too much of an advantage? And so that is going to begin here in the coming week. And that was an article I read over on CNBC, but it was all over the news this morning, especially. So if you're interested in learning more about that, well, just go over to news.fill in the blank. I go to Bing because I'm glutton for punishment. I enjoy their news service, and type in cloud, and you're going to learn all the things you need to learn. Now, I mentioned before there was an airline that was compromised through a phishing scam. They just talked about it here recently, but it was back in July. Over at American Airlines, they've notified customers of a recent data breach of hackers compromised an undisclosed number of employee email accounts and gained access to sensitive information. A notification letter sent out on Friday, the 16th of September. The airline explained that it has no evidence that the information was used in bad ways, but they did expose information about employee and customer names, date of birth, mailing addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, driver's license numbers, passport numbers, or medical information. So they have no evidence that it's been used, but it's been captured. And this is a lot of very sensitive information for those that were identified as being compromised. They have given them a couple of years free over at Experience Identity Works. So all the more reason to be very careful with what you do. Maybe implement a zero trust environment. Make sure that the phishing information does not get through the firewall. All right, that takes us through the news of the day. Let's talk about how I pushed the wrong button. There we are. Here's a question for you. Obviously, I just showed you this picture. I'm going to show it to you again. Look at that. That's how I do this over here. Do you know what tools are making that happen? I bet you wonder how I'm able to do such fancy things. PowerPoint. You ever want me to do a show on how I pulled the show off one-handed? Okay, I use two hands over here, but without a whole production crew. I've got Daniel changing views. But if you're interested, put a note in the comments. I've often thought about doing a behind the scenes of how I produce this, because every now and again, I do click the wrong button, as you just saw. All right, well, that takes us through This Week in Cloud. Let's talk about the updates from the cloud providers that have been released today in a lot of cases. Amazon SageMaker autopilot experiments are now up to 8 times faster with the new Ensemble training mode powered by AutoGluon. I love that. Sometimes I have to tell you, sometimes I choose these articles, these updates from Amazon. They're the best at naming things. I just love the way they name them. Sounds like complete science fiction. But hey, it makes their ML workloads run so much faster because of what they've done. So if you're in the ML space and you're looking for a great place to do it, Amazon's making it more better. Look at it right over there. All right, let's see what's going on at Azure. Now, Azure, I have a preview release, a public preview of encrypted scopes in hierarchical namespaces enabled storage accounts. What this means is you can get individual storage keys for each of these accounts as long as they're segregated in that hierarchy. This is in preview, so probably in about 2 or 3 months, I'm going to come and tell you it's now GA. But what this means is greater security. Obviously, we're talking a lot about security today. And as I mentioned earlier in the conversation with John, security is not a one-trick pony. It is not a one-tool-fits-all. You've got to look for every single way possible to make sure that your data is as safe as possible. So that's another way that Azure is helping you keep your data safe. And over at BigQuery Omni now has introduced support for an on-demand pricing model for a limited duration runs. Now, this is super interesting because it allows greater pricing flexibility. But if you're not familiar with what BigQuery Omni is, makes me chuckle when I see cloud providers coming out with services that are meant to abstract and pull data in and run processes over on the other cloud providers. Well, BigQuery Omni does just that. It goes in and it looks at data sources over on Azure and over on AWS to bring into your BigQuery queries to create greater intelligence. So it's interesting in the fact that it's greater pricing flexibility and visibility into the fact that if you're not the leading cloud provider, you're playing a lot nicer with the other cloud providers. Read that for what it is. All right, I've often mentioned here that I'm not here to sell you anything except maybe coming and hanging out with us over here at Rackspace, which is what takes us to the Rackspace Job of the Day. And I've talked to you a lot in the past about Job of the Days that are account principals. Now, as an account principal, that means in our professional services organization, you're sort of owning that relationship. And we're looking for somebody in the Oracle and SAP space, so ERP world, and we're looking for somebody who will help develop professional relationships with our clients and act as that single point of contact for the client executives and account managers. So you are reining all of that in. You are helping make sure that the customers are as successful as they can be with their technologies of choice. If you're interested in learning more about that job or any others, you can go over to rackspace.jobs and check it out. There is a bevy of them over there. We are doing a lot of hiring, especially as we head into Q4. Well, folks, I'm so glad that you're here. You can find this podcast. You can find all the other information, the security research that we just published over at rackspace.com/solve. Go and check that out. I would love it if you would. This, of course, has been a happy Thursday edition of our Cloud Talk Live. I was traveling earlier in the week, but I want to send a special thank you out to our good friends at App Dynamics. I was hanging out with them at an event on Monday. Always great people and amazing technology. If you have applications running in the cloud providers or anywhere for that matter, and you want to be able to have greater visibility into what they are doing and how we're tying that content back into real business KPIs, there's nobody better than App Dynamics. Now, I'm back here on Tuesday, and I have got my good friend and fellow Racker, Vinesh Kulp, who's going to be on. He works with me inside of the office of the CTO. He is a healthcare genius in the cloud, and we are going to be having conversations about trends of, specifically in healthcare, workloads happening in the cloud and in the new technologies that exist. Well, folks, that means you'll be listening to some fun music. Everyone, thanks for being here for this Thursday edition of Cloud Talk Live. We're back here on Tuesday with another one. I'll see you then.